Welcome to the Willamette Women Democrats. My name is Veronica Williams, and I have the honor to serve as the president of W2D. We have an outstanding program for you today, and I'm very glad you could join us, especially with this beautiful sunny weather outside. Before I make a few remarks, I have several housekeeping matters. As you have joined us, we have muted your speakers. I'm sorry, I got unmuted and I'm not sure, I got muted, I'm not sure where I started. So I just want to welcome everybody and remind folks that as you joined us, we have muted your speakers and turned off your videos. We do this to improve the overall quality of the transmission of the program and to help ensure that our speakers will not be interrupted by accidental noises at your end. So unless I specifically call on you, please do stay muted and with your videos off through the program. Please feel free to put any questions for our speakers in the chat. After their remarks, we will be introducing elected officials and candidates in the room, and then we will get to your questions. Monday was International Women's Day with the theme of Choose to Challenge. This day was first observed over 100 years ago on March 19th, 1911 in Germany, Austria, Denmark, and Switzerland. Several years later, the date was moved to March 8th, and it is now celebrated around the world under the auspices of the United Nations. The day recognizes the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women globally, and it is a call to action for gender parity. This year's theme is a commitment to choose to challenge inequity, to call out bias, question stereotypes, and help forge an inclusive world. President Biden has signed into law the American Rescue Plan, and I know he's talking about it later this evening, so I hope you will catch it after our program. It is a needed and very ambitious plan which seeks not only to bring an end to the pandemic and right the economic ship for all Americans, but it importantly sets us on a path to lift out of poverty many of Americans' children. It brings us hope. This week, W2D lost a special person, Heather Chrisman. Heather was a pillar of her community, a woman known for her activism, her passion for service, her commitment to the arts. Heather moved to Lake Oswego in 1970, and in 1973, she and her husband opened their first picture frame shop, Chrisman Framing. Over the years, it has expanded to 4 locations in the metro area. In her community, she served on the board and was past president of the Women's Coalition, the Lake Oswego Chamber of Commerce Board, a 2-term Lake Oswego City Councilor, a member of the Preservation Society Board, and involved with Lake O Reads and the Arts Festival. Here at W2D, she will always be remembered as a founder of our organization over 20 years ago. Heather, we will miss you dearly, and we thank you for your vision to bring others together to create a space that provides programs that inform, encourages women to be politically active, and that endorses and supports the candidates and issues which best reflect the principles of the Democratic Party. And now I would like to introduce board member and chair of our program committee, Nancy Murray, to introduce our guest speakers. Nancy?
Good afternoon. We have seen disagreements over race, police reform, our former president, and the results of the November election itself play out loudly and sometimes violently on the national stage that then become headlines around the world. Portland's protests became newsworthy around the world as well. How much of that taking sides is disrupting the societal cohesion in Oregon that most of us want to see. Today's guest speakers have been taking a close look at Oregonians for their entire professional careers, one through public opinion research surveys and the other through local journalism. Adam Davis is back with us again to share results from recent surveys on a number of topics where Oregonians have found common ground and where we are divided. He co-founded DHM Research in 1977 and is now senior counsel to the firm. He has decades of experience conducting both qualitative and quantitative opinion research to support planning, communications, and public policy making. With his wife, Adam co-founded the nonprofit, nonpartisan Oregon Values and Belief Center 3 years ago. Their work is dedicated to providing valid and statistically reliable opinion research to help organizations across the state build stronger communities. He's a graduate of Portland State University and the University of Oregon School of Law. John Schrag is a journalist and the executive director since 2016. Excuse me, here comes my cat, right on time. For the Pamplin Media Group that includes 26 weekly and monthly newspapers in Oregon. Focusing on public affairs reporting, John collaborates with Adam at the Oregon Beliefs and Values Center by reporting on their monthly survey data. They explore what issues unite and divide Oregonians to help build strategies to build on common ground, as well as explore effective responses to our divisions. Previously, John was publisher of the News Times, Forest Grove, and Hillsborough Tribune, and managing news editor for Willamette Week. He is a graduate of University of Illinois Springfield, receiving an MA in public affairs reporting. Welcome, Adam and John, to Willamette Women Democrats.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Nancy. Why don't we get going? Good late afternoon, everyone. John and I really appreciate this opportunity to share with you some information about what we're doing regarding opinion research and journalism in the state of Oregon. I'm going to run you through a quick, I promise, PowerPoint about the Oregon Values and Belief Center, as Nancy said, which my wife and I founded a few years ago. So I'm going to share screen and we're going to keep our fingers crossed and we're going to see if we have a PowerPoint show to share. Okay, can everyone see that? John, can you see it?
Yep.
Okay,
yep.
Perfect. Well, everyone, the Oregon Values and Belief Center is really about a three-part vision. I've been doing public opinion research across this state of ours for over 40 years. And I've really focused on opinion research to support planning, policy making, and communications. I had the opportunity, and I consider it a privilege, to put together the first Oregon Values and Belief Study back in 1992. And that's what the Oregon Values and Belief Center is about. And that is to continue the work of that decennial study that was also conducted in 2002 and again in 2013. Bottom line is that we want to provide organizations valid and statistically reliable opinion research to help them in the work they're doing across Oregon, building stronger communities. And very importantly, and this is what really motivated Gina and me to co-found the Oregon Values and Belief Center, is to give voice to rural Oregonians and minorities. And you have to appreciate that the way opinion research is being conducted today, it is not representative of all Oregonians. And we'll come back to that in a moment. The Oregon Values and Belief Center is about working hard to be representative of all Oregonians. Another big part of this center is really pushing back against the constant drumbeat of divisiveness and pitting one side against another. I know from the research I've done over the years, some of which I've shared with all of you in the past, that there is common ground. And we have to be reminded about this common ground on a regular basis. So this is about highlighting that common ground that we as Oregonians have. I mentioned about the goal of assisting organizations. We can help these organizations with a number of things. The research can help with a number of things. Keep in mind that a lot of these organizations don't have the resources to pay for good research to help with needs assessments, planning, policy making, program evaluation, communications, public involvement, their commitment, their initiatives related to DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, civic engagement, and public education. These organizations, many of them are struggling, but it's important that they have good information to make good decisions. A lot of these organizations are struggling to find funding, and there are some, especially this past year, some real challenges related to human resources. The Oregon Values and Belief Center is really like having a Pew Research Center for the state of Oregon. And I think all of you are aware of the Pew Research Center, an amazing organization. I can only dream that of having the money that those folks have from the Pew Foundation. Maybe someday, we'll see. But what really will distinguish our work is that it'll be ongoing, independent and nonpartisan, representative of rural Oregon and minorities, valid and statistically reliable. And we're not just going to do quantitative research or surveys. We will also do qualitative research consisting of a number of different forms of qualitative research, from small group studies and focus groups to large group studies. Participant observation, all those kinds of things. Okay.
Hello, this is Nancy. Yes. Are you interested?
I'm picking up a little interference, but
You could look. Come check it out. Okay. When can you do that?
Okay, guys, I'm going to push through, and I don't want to. I want to give John some time here. I mentioned before the challenge of doing research in Oregon that really gives you a feel for how all Oregonians view different issues. The way research is done these days is mostly using proportional samples. That means that there'll be more completed interviews from the more populated areas of the state. So that's one issue. You don't end up with many interviews in areas outside of the Willamette Valley, the Portland Metro, the North Willamette, and the South Willamette area. So the information that you do have, the completed information, the completed interviews you do have for those areas, you don't have enough of them to do what I just described as valid and statistically reliable research to help organizations in those regions, right? The other issue with a lot of the research I've done and other public opinion researchers and pollsters do is that they're focused on voters only, and often likely voters, not even all voters, but likely voters. And what do we know about voters? higher education, higher income, longer term residence, wider, you just go down the line. That's what the Oregon Values and Beliefs Center is all about. Providing the state of Oregon, the different regions of Oregon, good information to help the organizations working in those regions, and also representative of the general population. These are the 8 regions. Some of them may look very familiar, or they may look very familiar, and these are the OCF Leadership Advisory Councils areas, okay? And what we would do every year is an annual values and belief survey. We'd have a rotating list of topics so that over a 3-year span, we would then start again and we would have trend information. We would have shorter triannual surveys, annual focus groups, and regional analysis and reporting. This kind of gives you an idea, and what I want you to take away from this is that we've got the research portion of OVBC on the left, right, involving the annual survey, the triannual surveys, and the large group studies. But as important as the research is, and I saw a lot of our research just end up on a shelf and never really used to help an organization, there's the communications part, which feeds through our website. I'd encourage you to visit that if you haven't. And our reporting and presentations, our partner relations, and our media relations. And you'll see right here, the Oregon Values and Voices Project, which has us working with Pamplin Media and EO Media. And John will tell you more in a very few minutes. When we do an actual survey, it's very important to realize that we're going to be building this panel. We're in the process of building an online research panel. It's Oregon's panel. It's not a private company's panel. We invested in the software development to make possible that panel and the supporting rewards program. And so we have a targeted participant attraction. We have a sign-up page and a registration form. We have panelist participation. I mentioned the rewards program. And we always have to assure people of anonymity and confidentiality. But you're not going to be able to assure a truly representative sample using a panel only, because right off the bat, what does a panel assume, right? Online access, high-speed internet. You're going to have to use other data collection methodologies for specific studies, including text message, email, telephone, mail, and in person. So you're basically using what is called hybrid research designs, all to do what our goal is, and that's to provide these organizations with good information. We've had some milestones, and right at the most recently is the Oregon Values and Voices Project there at the bottom. On the horizon, we're going to keep working to build our panel out, get our projects done and done well, and constantly looking for ways to improve our research and outreach techniques. And yours truly will be beating the bushes for money, which is challenging these days. People are really under siege. There's a lot competing for their attention. I realize that, but I think we have something special here. I think it represents a real, unusual, interesting legacy project for an individual or a foundation. And I'm just going to wrap up with this. OVBC provides independent and nonpartisan research that informs future planning, policymaking, communications at the statewide, regional, and local levels. Most research and polling relies on proportional sampling, a methodology that often suppresses the voices of rural Oregonians and minorities. Urban hubs like Portland and Eugene instead dominate the findings. We instead use stratified sample to give voice to rural Oregonians and hard-to-reach populations without jeopardizing reporting for more populous areas of the state and demographic subgroups. Importantly, OVBC will show areas of agreement between Oregonians, providing us with positive starting points for more productive discussions about the kind of future we want for our communities and state. And we do look forward to hearing your voice. And I would encourage all of you to visit the website. And importantly, encourage friends and relatives wherever they are in our state to become part of this effort to really be a tool to help us move our state forward in the right direction. I look forward during question and answer to maybe tease you with some things we're finding out, where there is common ground, where there is some disagreement. But for now, I'll turn it over to John.
All right. Don't know if people can hear me, I hope. I will jump in. So this is the first time Adam and I have done this horse and pony show in public. So it's actually interesting for me to learn more about what goes on behind the scenes. Like any forward-facing vocation, things look so simple. You see a poll cited on a news show and you think, oh, someone asked some questions. You don't realize how hard it is to get that accurate information, much like it's hard to get out an accurate news story. So I wanted to start with a, oddly enough, a brief, very brief, I promise, sort of explanation of the business model in journalism these days, because it's behind how we ended up with this unique and I think very exciting collaboration with Adam's group. When I started in the news business, and even when I came to Oregon in the early 90s, journalism was still fairly profitable. It's never been tremendously profitable at the local level, but generally newspapers and TV stations could make money because we really had a monopoly on advertising. And that allowed us to get pretty good money from advertisers and then spend that money on things that really didn't make sense. Covering local government, covering even local schools, covering civic organizations like yours. They don't really pay for themselves. But when news organizations were profitable, we had enough money to say, we're going to do that anyway, even though that's not what readers are demanding. So, and partly, I think a good news shop has sort of a civic outlook and says, you know, we have an obligation to tell people not just the fun stories and the stories that we know they enjoy, but also some stories that they should be reading to inform them and to try to bring people together with a common understanding. And what happened was, I've been through three major body blows to our industry. The first one was the advent of the internet. And we really, as a industry, misplayed that. We underappreciated the fact that the internet would be a place where people could find news. As an industry, we were late to the web. And then when we got to the web, we simply put what was in our printed papers or what was on our nightly broadcasts up on the web. There was no new content. And then we made the biggest mistake of all, is that we gave it away. So we had platforms where we were asking people to pay, either directly through subscriptions or supported by advertisements. And then we put that same content up and gave it away for free. And the idea was, well, don't worry, we'll just get the ads online. And what happened was no one could monetize the ads. They were so cheap and so plentiful that internet advertising, it works, but it does not pay. So that was the first one. And then came the Great Recession. I was in as the publisher in Forest Grove when the Great Recession came in. That was really hard. A lot of our advertising dropped off. We scaled back our staff. We pulled in. We stopped covering certain communities. It was very hard decisions, and I felt horrible about it. And then we kind of found our footing. We, in our company, as well as a lot of other companies, we're actually seeing some very positive results up until a year ago. We are seeing people being willing to pay for their subscriptions. An increasing number of our readers are paying readers now online and in print. And just as we were kind of feeling like we got a handle on this, we kept hearing these reports about some sort of a virus in China. And again, I think like a lot of industries, we failed to recognize how devastating that would be, not only to people's personal lives, but also to our industry. because in the course of 1 week, about a year ago, a little, I think it's more in April, we lost, I think, a third of our advertising revenue over 5 days because grocery stores couldn't keep food on the shelves. There was that panic. Remember that panic run on groceries? Fred Meyer, Safeway are like, we don't want to advertise. We don't know what we're going to have. So suddenly we lost our grocery advertising. No one was buying cars in the middle of a pandemic, so we lost auto advertising. And then the big one was events. Everything from small community Rotary events that would pay for a $45 ad in the Lake Oswego Review to multi-$1,000 contracts for events at big convention centers all disappeared. So it was hard. We ended up laying off a few of our reporters and other staff members. All the rest of us went to less than 40 hours a week, which is currently the status we're still on. And so we started for the past 12 months looking at what are some other ways we can get money. And we've had some success. One of the things that we've done is we have started applying for and getting grants. So we currently have a grant. We have 2 current grants right now, both for education, which are allowing us to bring back some of our reporters' hours. And we're looking at the impact of distance learning on Oregon's minority students. And it's a great project. The money comes from 2 separate journalism organizations. One is asking us to do some investigative reporting. The other one is asking us to do some reporting on solutions to the problem. So we're looking at creative responses to the learning gap that we're seeing with distance learning. So that's exciting, but that's still not enough. And so what we are increasingly doing is looking at people like Adam, people who we trust, for what are in effect funded focus. In talking to Adam over the years, what we realized is, as he said, is they were doing great research, and increasingly as newsrooms got smaller and smaller, fewer journalists were looking at their work. And so he would try to pitch us stories, and we'd look at it and we'd say, wow, there's 8 great stories in this survey. We can do 1. And Jim Redden, bless his heart, would work all weekend and do a story about one of the questions that Adam's team worked on, but the other 7 stories just never got done. And at one point he was sort of expressing his frustration, and he sort of said, well, is this newsworthy? And he said, is there a story in this monthly survey? And I said, Adam, there's enough here to keep a reporter busy full time. And then he made the mistake of saying, what would that cost? And I was like, Adam, you can't buy a reporter. And he laughed and he said, I know that, but what? And I was like, well, we could, like $60,000. That's what we need to get in a paycheck. We can take care of overhead, insurance, liability, $60,000. And he said, I have that. And it wasn't quite that simple, but it took some back and forth. And I want to be transparent about this because I think our industry has to be transparent about this. So it involved some conversations. And what we basically said is, no, you can't buy reporters. But here's the deal. You have some marketing needs. As he said, they need to increase the membership on their panel. We, along with another news organization, EO Media, have access particularly to some rural readers. And then through some other efforts we have ways of reaching readers of color in Oregon. And so what we said is, look, we have a long relationship. We trust you, you trust us. If you agree to spend some money with us to help you work on your panels, we will take all that money and we will apply it to the journalism. And so what Adam is getting is the focus that he deserves. And I would not have done this if it was something we would not and should not cover. So this is an easy one to start with. I haven't lost a minute of sleep over this one, because if you look at it, the concern over these arrangements is, well, wait a minute, John, you're taking money from an advocate. He's an advocate. And I'm like, well, number one, I'm not sure that's true, but if he is an advocate, if Oregon Values and Belief Center is advocating for something, what are they advocating for? They're advocating for truth. They're advocating for unbiased facts. If there is a better match for journalists, I don't know what it is. So this for me was an incredible opportunity, because I got to say, yes, we can accept money. we can accept money for marketing, and we can dedicate that money to journalism. And I don't think anyone is going to bat an eye over this within my industry. I do think we need to be transparent about it so that people say, well, wait, what is this arrangement? And it is just as I explained it. We're giving them some help with what they need for the panels. We're getting enough money to finally turn a couple reporters loose on this. So yeah, we are going to be able to spend some time writing these stories, highlighting these stories, promoting these stories, which are fantastic pieces of journalism. And I think it's a really exciting way to do it. Now, it does go to a slippery slope. And, you know, for a later conversation, that would be great to come back to this group and talk about the ethics of sponsored journalism. I think it'd be interesting. It'd be good to get Brian Monahan from the Lake Oswego Review. He has some real good thoughts on it. But I can tell you that this, for me, is a really exciting new development in our company and in the state. So basically, we now have funding to be able to turn a couple very good reporters, one from our company, one from EO Media. And between the two of them, they're generating on average a story a week on these surveys that help us really understand that I think it is the myth of the two Oregons. That is such a journalistic shorthand that I have played into. You know, you've got red Oregon, blue Oregon, urban Oregon, rural Oregon, white Oregon, Oregon of color. And it's not that simple. Thank goodness it's not that simple. There are nuances, and through Adam's work, we're able to look at those nuances and say, sure, there are differences. And we will talk about the differences, but we also will talk about where there is common agreement and where we can move the state forward. So that's why I'm so excited about this. Adam, anything to add?
Hey, for our first time, John, I thought that was pretty good. Thank you. I think we're wrapped up with what we wanted to just get out on the table for everyone. We're really looking forward, Veronica, to some questions and
Wonderful.
some going back and forth maybe.
Certainly. So I do have some, but if people have questions, please put them in the chat. And before we get to the Q&A, I want to take a quick moment to recognize some elected officials that are in the room and some former elected officials. So if you fall in one of those categories and you feel like turning your video on so you can wave at folks and saying hello, you're most welcome to. But at this point in time, I would like to welcome Tualatin City Councilor Bridget Brooks. I would like to welcome former state representative Margaret Doherty. Terry Rigsby, who is on the board of the West Multnomah Soil and Conservation District. We have with us former state senator Diane Rosenbaum, and Metro Councilor Garrett Rosenthal. And I think I have covered everybody I could find who had signed in. So if I missed you, put it in the chat and I will recognize you. And with that, let's go to some questions. Can you give us an example or one or two common grounds that you found through your research in especially with groups that are not usually allied with each other?
Absolutely. Let me share with all of you some things that we have been asking about for a long time in the state of Oregon. We continue to ask about. Remember, we're about keeping a light on this common ground as well. So to the question, for example, what is it that they value? What do you value about living in the state of Oregon? Or what do you value about living in your community? It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat, a Republican, someone who's living in an urban area of the state, a suburban area of the state, a rural part of the state, or a part of the state that is changing from rural to suburban, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what age you are, what gender you are. What people value about living in Oregon is the natural beauty. They value the outdoor recreation, both the proximity of that outdoor recreation, as well as the variety of that outdoor recreation. They value the clean air and the clean water. They value the sense of community. The sense of community you have in a small town in Eastern Oregon, the sense of community a lot of people feel they have in a neighborhood in Portland. And they value the climate. And you may say, well, really? Yeah, listen, compared to other areas of the country, other areas of the world, we have a very special climate here. You have to go a long ways down the list to find anything that relates to government or public finance. First thing you'll see generally is that there's still a lot of people who like the fact that we don't have to pump our own gas. And the other one that you'll see is no sales tax. Hey, it doesn't matter what demographic group you're in. Those are the things that people value about living in the state of Oregon and in their community. Again, doesn't matter what demographic group you're in, people greatly value, and I made this point in a commentary that I worked on with John, that people really are concerned about vulnerable children and vulnerable seniors. They really support a social safety net to help those specific populations. Incredible support across demographics in Oregon for small business. You'll see similar feelings about the most important public services, and you'll see similar feelings about what the most important issues to do something about at the state level. So, you guys, that's just a tip of the iceberg. I can go on, and we will go on, and we'll go on, and we'll repeat ourselves, that there is this common ground that we can build on. I know there's a question floating out there. Well, Adam, where are the problems? Where's the divisiveness? Well, I think all of you, to just cut to the chase here, it really is driven by the extremes of the political party as to the role of government and different feelings about taxation, both the taxation vehicles that we have in Oregon, as well as the amounts. So there's where the divisiveness, and it's often camouflaged by other things, but we of course also have some social issues where there is divide across the state as well. That's a long-winded answer. I'm sorry, Veronica, but you got me going.
No, it's a good one. I was just making some notes. Couple other questions. One had to do with, and I don't know if this is for you, Adam, or for John, but a question about whether OPB has expressed interest in following your research and reporting on it. Have we gotten it onto the radio?
I've had a wonderful relationship, and I think John will say the same thing with OPB. I think DHM Research will continue to be a firm that will be working closely with OPB. And John, OPB, I know you're involved in some other projects with OPB and the Oregonian, actually.
Yeah, there's actually a pretty amazing sense of collaboration in Oregon among media groups that's unusual based on other states. I tried to foster a collaboration between some Oregon groups and some media groups in California, and I was warned many times and that it is just very difficult for media organizations in California to work together. In Oregon, we do have a pretty collaborative model. We've worked with OPB on some projects, and certainly, I think, it's an area where we'd like to bring them in aboard. It's just hard enough, and Adam can attest to this, all the unforeseen logistics involved in 2 news organizations and 1 nonprofit working together. I think our goal is this year, let's get the model worked out. Hopefully Adam can get some more funding. We can keep this going. Because the other thing, I would love OPB because they have a statewide footprint, but what I would really like to do is find a way where we can help, the TV station in Medford, the newspaper in Baker City, the radio station in Klamath Falls get this information. And I think to do that, we'll have to take it to a next step and probably make that someone's job. But I would love to do that, to sort of talk bigger that I think people look to OPB because it is a statewide news source, but I also would like to get it to the small market media outlets that really have an impact on those local readers that often don't get this information.
Another question is maybe for Adam. Do you find anything in social media that helps you keep the pulse of Oregonian opinion, or is that a valuable use of time? I guess I would say, because social media can be pretty broad.
I think social media is valuable, but you have to appreciate who it is that you're hearing from, right? And understand that for some of the social media platforms, you're talking about people, first of all, that have access to broadband, internet access, high-speed internet access. But it is a great tool for us, especially in questionnaire development. You get ideas of topics, of questions, of wording of questions. And what we will do as part of our research is 2 tracks, is what I call them. There's the scientific track of research that we'll be doing, and that John and I have been talking about, is validity and statistical reliability. But we want this tool to also be an engagement tool, an involvement tool, a public education tool. So we're going to have just a general engagement track as well, where we would send out invites over social media using different platforms to invite those people to weigh in on these issues. And we'll have basically 2 databases to look at. And it's often fascinating, you guys, to look at the similarities and the differences between a more random selection of people across all demographics and some of these more finite populations that tend to gravitate towards certain social media platforms. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. So has there been more divisiveness seen since the pandemic within Oregon? I mean, I know what we hear in the media, but I also realize that sometimes what gets covered is actually a vocal minority, not a majority. My personal favorite was all the national media coverage of 100 people in Boise who were really upset about wearing masks.
Yeah.
Half of whom were children and can't vote. So, what are you seeing in Oregon? Are you seeing increased divisiveness, or are you seeing actually pretty much the same?
I think overall, I would say there hasn't been that big of a difference, except among one particular group, and that would be the people I would put towards the far right of the political spectrum. The shutdowns, the mask mandates has really been fodder, and I could just I will share with you what I read in responses to verbatim responses to open-ended questions in our surveys. It's very firmly held and can be quite nasty in their comments, and that is pandemic related. And it's not just in Oregon, though. It's in other states as well. And so you're seeing it elsewhere. But there are a lot of people where we'll be measuring actual more confidence in government institutions as a result of COVID. So don't think that it doesn't cut both ways here as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be particularly interesting to see as the Rescue Act rolls out, starts impacting more and more parts of the economy, and especially people who frequently are not directly impacted, to see if we start seeing some changes. John, a question for you. Are readers of local journalism more constructive than opinion givers who mostly get their information online, or can you tell? And is this project helping you know your readers better and what they're interested in?
I think the answer to the first part is we don't know. We are pretty late to the engagement analysis of our readers. It's only within the past year since we put up paywalls that we've been able to get a sense as to who our online readers are. And with newspaper readers, all we have is an address and a name. Now, again, Brian Monahan could look at his readership area and he knows. We do know that our readers tend to be slightly more educated and slightly higher income than the average population, and those two are obviously related. As far as online, we don't know. We have our share of trolls on our website too, so it doesn't. We're not free of that. But the last part of the question is the great one, which is that it's at some point, yeah, this is very helpful for us. We have readers in the Willamette Valley. We have readers in Central Oregon. EO Media, the other partner in this, has readers on the North Coast. They have readers in Central Oregon, in Bend, and then they have readers in Eastern Oregon. One of the reasons we're so excited by this is that eventually Adam's group is going to be able to get us data, enough numbers to say, you know what, here's what people in Central Oregon are thinking. That is going to be huge. But even before we get there, the one thing we haven't mentioned is that these panelists are real people. They're not anonymous people picking up the phone. Adam actually knows who each of them are, and he has contact information for them. And bless his heart, he has asked each of them, are you willing to talk to the press? And for the ones who say yes, that means even though we may not have a statistical analysis of what the readers in Prineville think, we can talk to 2 readers in Prineville and we can talk to them about their opinions. It's a huge benefit to be able to do that. And I think, again, when I talk to other journalists about this project, that's what gets them excited, which is like, you can actually talk to the people. I'm like, yes, we can.
It's so cool to share with you the large percentage of people. It would be fun to do a written exercise. It's the focus group moderator and me coming out right now. But if I asked all of you what percentage you think of people that tell us that they would be okay being contacted by a reporter to follow up their answers to particular questions, we're approaching 1 out of 2 people.
Wow.
And that's pretty darn good. And that's why we need to have our own panel as Oregonians. We can't contact people that we get through other panels. For example, DHM Research could not interview people because those panel companies, those panelists are gold. They don't want us to invite them to join some other panel or survey. So that's one of the benefits of building our own panel. It's Oregon's panel.
Thank you. One question for you, John, when you were talking about relationships with other media outlets within Oregon, a question about Sinclair Broadcasting. So, you know, this is a nationwide company and it's having a major impact, editorial impact, I would even say, on media entities that it owns. So how's the relationship with them?
The answer is I don't know, and I'm not a TV news watcher. So the two TV stations that I know of are Coin 6, and because we have a relationship with them, and then KGW because we've done a couple collaborations with them. What I can tell you is my colleagues in the broadcast world are facing a lot of the same problems we are: loss of revenue, etc. They do have, what this question gets at, an additional problem is increasingly decisions in their newsrooms are being made outside of Oregon. I will tell you, I am very impressed with the quality of the journalists in broadcast. I know it's an easy target to beat up on them and say, all they do is cover, car crashes and weather storms. These are hardworking people. And I've got to believe, based on what I've read about Sinclair stations and other communities, that it's very difficult for them to be under that ownership. And I really feel for them because it does sound like in many cities, it's a pretty hostile workforce.
And I have one other question that somebody submitted kind of earlier on. It's a little bit different direction, but a person had read an article interviewing an economist, and his suggestion was that we needed a national economic index of how well high school graduates are doing. Do you get into any of that kind of research anymore now, Adam, or is this really a different direction?
I love the question. That is something that we really want to move into. Related to that, I would love to develop a civic knowledge and civic engagement index so that we know where we are as a state. Relative to people's awareness and knowledge levels about the ABCs of government, about public finance, and keep track as to what they're doing relative to specifics when it comes to community engagement, and track that over time, right? So that kind of index, an economic index, would be valuable. If you have a large sample size, then you could break it down. How are we doing them young versus old? How are we doing women versus men? There are some amazing differences often on some issues between men and women, for example. So yeah, it's on the drawing board is all I can say right now. It was a great question. Thank you for reminding me about that. Actually.
Okay, no, it was a very good question. Well, thank you both very much. Very interesting. We will keep following you, and as we see articles coming up, we'll try and be sure to remind our membership that there are important things that they might want to be taking a look at in their local papers. And we really appreciate both of your times. So I would, at this point, like to just wrap some things up with some information for everyone. Our April program is going to be on April the 8th, and we will be welcoming Meredith Connolly, the Oregon Director of Climate Solutions, and State Senator Jeff Golden, who's the Democrat from the Ashland area, for a discussion of Oregon's climate crisis, from fire to ice storms, and an outline of solutions that are now being considered in the legislature that serve both rural and urban Oregon. I also want to let you know that the Washington County Democrats on Saturday, April 3rd, will be having their annual spring fundraiser. The event will feature a panel moderated by Tiger Tualatin School District Vice Chair Ben Bowman, and will include school board candidates from Beaverton, Hillsborough, and Tiger Tualatin school districts. Tickets are $10, and they are available at the Washington County Democrats website. We would love to see all of you there. These are challenging times, so please take care, stay safe. Sign up when you are able to get your COVID vaccination. And most of all, take a moment to thank the elected officials at all levels who get up every day on behalf of, quote, "we the people," as our Senator Jeff Merkley would say. Thank you all for attending, and we will see you on Zoom next month. Take care.